This is a continuation of the articulator demonstration using the tooth library teeth. Now in this video I'm going to complete making these veneers. First, do some object management and move the models into the correct collections, the posing, the working model, and the teeth that you're working on. Notice that the actual teeth geometry we're going to standardize for all tooth libraries, and this is done by putting it into the collection. Now we can hide and view these buttons, and you can actually see the mesh structure is different. Next, we're going to be drawing the margin. So select it, and then shift right click to place the cursor, and then use the E key and left click to set each vertex down. So E left click, or you can click on the extrude button on the right hand side, which then does it automatically. You just left click all the way. You don't have to use the E key. Following this, we're going to cut the surface, which will then become the inside surface of your crown. And then it will appear in green, yellow for the top. Let's do another margin. So here, I want to put the margin over here. So it's quite difficult to get access to that specific point to see what's going on. In this case, I'm going to use Alt B, and I'll just give it like a cross section snippet so that I can actually see where this is. This is really helpful in Blender to use the Alt B. Then use Alt B to get out of the cross section mode once again. This was very helpful to actually view the tooth from the interproximal side angle. If ever you find yourself in a situation where you want to just save the file in its current form so that you can come back to it at some stage, all you need to do is navigate to the top, click on Save Current, and this will then make a file with a suffix at the end, and you can always return to that file at a later stage. So in this specific tooth, I'm going to use Alt B again because I find it very difficult to get through to the other side. So Alt B, make a little bit of a window like that, and we've got total access to see where we need to go from the actual interproximal side. Very, very helpful indeed. With this specific tooth preparation, I would like to see the previous surface that we've created so that we don't have an overlap. Okay, just expose that by clicking on the surface, and then we can draw the margin all the way around and make sure that they don't intersect each other. Additionally, please remember that there'll be a little bit of a support edge going on top of that, so you may indeed have a little bit of an overlap once you've finished milling them, which may need a little bit of adjustment in the contact area. At this stage they are all completed. If you're not satisfied with one specific one, or you want to redo a surface, just select the actual surface, and then we're going to delete that surface. So you just then go delete selected surface, and that should then get rid of it, and then you can do a new one. Remember, Control Z is to go back. Great, now it's time to survey and block out undercuts. It is best to do them individually because of the nature of these undercuts. If you do find two or more that do not have undercuts, you can put them into one basket. So be very careful which ones you choose, else you may end up with open margins in your veneers. Great, it is now time to learn how to survey. Select one of your surfaces and then survey lower surfaces. In transparent mode, when you toggle X-ray mode, you can quite easily see where the undercut lies. Go into one of these quadrants and put your index finger down on the left mouse button and then drag your mouse along the table, which then moves, and you can see on the top here, this has now created an undercut, and these are very easy to pick up. Now it is important to remember that this will then extrude in the point of your direction. Note that we are not rotating the scene. If I hold my index finger on the mouse wheel, I will then rotate the scene. So it looks very similar then to do this. So please don't get confused. There's a difference between doing this and then doing this. When you rotate the surface, you can actually see the numbers changing on the right hand side. So just make sure that you do this correctly. You can reset the scene to view it from the top or the bottom if you have made a mistake. Then block out lower. Alright, you'll be ending up with a blue surface. It's called surveyed abutment because we've just surveyed it, and we have a blocked out object, and this blocked out object is critical for when it makes the actual fitting surface. We're going to do the exact same thing with the next one, and then block out this surface. I'm going to demonstrate what we do with these thin veneers. Notice how it extends to the back like that. Now select it and then survey. Now we want to survey this so that we don't end up with an extruded object with wings. Okay, so we don't want to end up with that. It is best to rotate it in a direction like this, because then we're going to end up with a correct blocked out object. I will just demonstrate what the incorrect way is. So this is the incorrect way. I'm going to hide the models, and you'll see when you look at this blocked out version that you've got these little wings there. We don't want that. Alright, now I'm going to do it the correct way. So I'm going to again look at it from the top down, and this will then be the correct way to do it. Basically, we want to put the veneer on its a path of insertion like this, and we're going to block out the lower. And even though the extruded model looks goes away from their model, this is the correct way, because when we create a margin, then what it does, like the edge will then extrude out here so that it becomes a proper veneer. If you don't do that, then this extrusion will not happen, and you may end up with a very different result, which is not favorable to making these veneers. Okay, I'm going to hit the fast forward button and then continue. Great, so this is what it then looks like. Let's head over to the next one, which is the contacts and margins. In this case, we don't have any contacts, so I'm going to left click and then shift left click on all of these, and we're going to make a supportive edge. So add support margin, and I'm going to give this a very fine one at 0.05 because we're looking at fine contacts over here. Right, so this takes a little while because it has to iterate through each and every tooth. Come and have a look at this specific tooth, what it's done. So here it has come out a little wider because this is where our block out model is. So if I look at the outliner and expose the block out model, we can then demonstrate what it's actually done. So here it's actually brought this margin out to the perimeter of this blocked out uh, object, and so it has it done over here. Here it comes out a little bit wider because that's where the block out comes. So the margin of this will always be on the outside of the blocking out. As you can see over here. Let us now go to the next folder, which focuses on the spacer and the zone. You can select all of them and then click the auto spacer, which will then add a die spacer and it'll add a zone all in one go using default values. For this one, I'll just explain. So this button will run through all of these codes in one button. Okay, you can choose to do it manually. I'm going to choose select all of these crowns, and we're going to then add a spacer. So here you're going to notice that we've got a die spacer and we've got the pencil lines showing. Now, the margin is, if you move this, it'll creep up or it'll creep down. You can't go all the way to 0. It's impossible to do this. But you can go close to the margin if you want to, uh, or you can bring it up a little bit. So then you can set the thickness of it. So the default is times 2, so it's 50 microns in thickness. I'm going to accept the spacer. So here you see it's been readily accepted, your spacer. We're going to then click on Add Safety Zone. Now this safety zone, there's a thickness of 1 millimeter, which is 0.5 millimeter. If you want to make them thinner, like veneers thinner, maybe 0.4, you then put in 0.8 value. And then you will then apply it. So this is times 2, by the way. You'd accept the zone. Now this does take a little bit of time to calculate because it's doing all the underlying models that objects that we need to finish the job. Now, this is going to become integral part of your crown. the zone is going to actually be added to your tooth library tooth. Let's move further. We do not need to do the occlusal adjustments because they have been done previously using the articulator. This is well documented in our first video, and you can find it in the articulation module video button. These have all video buttons. So in the articulator and in the crown and bridge, you can find the articulation over there. We typically do that before we start making crowns. Go to generating crowns and then view the teeth. Now, with this, we're going to select a tooth and we're going to edit the mesh. You'll see a pencil line appearing, and you will then left click and using the G key and the mouse wheel to change the proportional editing to bring this to the sort of outside of the pencil line. This shouldn't take too long to do. Notice that we have a very wide distance between the tooth and the pencil line. If we leave it like that, the crown is going to come out like this. We don't want that. So you can just simply stick it on the model using the G key like that, and it'll stick to the underlying model like this. It's almost like gluing it to the model. Yeah, I'm just going to bring it out a bit, even if you just put it on the pencil line. We can clearly see that this crown is a little bit too thin, but the green zone will be unified to the tooth. I'll just run through all of them individually. You can also, instead of using G key, you can just drag it, which also works. Over here, it is absolutely critical that you bring it to the pencil line. Alright, it's now time to generate these tooth libraries into these veneers. I've purposefully made the generation not work on one tooth to demonstrate what needs to be done. So I'm going to take these three and generate them like that. And booleans can fail. Um, when that happens, it is usually due to the fact that there's a collision of vertices or faces from the object that's being cut from the other object. So to remedy this, you can either remesh it with a different mesh structure, or you can simply move this tooth slightly in a different location. So here we see, don't get frightened when this happens. It is very, very seldom that this happens. So just take note, you see all of these other objects that are not really relevant to the crown process. So go Control Z backwards a few times until you get to the scene where you started off with. So that's all you need to do. Then we can move this tooth just slightly, or you can voxel remesh it using a different button on the modules in the actual wax up module. You can remesh this very easily, or you can slightly move it. But you'll notice that if I click on G, it just doesn't move, and that's because it is fixed. Also, the magnet tool is on, so I'm just going to deactivate the magnet tool, go to the model designer and just unlock it using this feature. So here you can see all of the locks over there. Model designer will then unlock this tooth, and as you can see, now we can move it. So make sure the magnet tool is off and the proportional editing tool is off. So if I move it, a G key, I can move it quite easy, but I don't want to move it too far out of occlusion. So I'm going to use the G key and the Z, GZ, and then I'll just take the arrows on the keyboard like that 2 or 3 times. Now it's been moved out of the um, the collision of the boolean, and we're going to see if this now generates. And voila, it has indeed generated. I'm going to look at the surface underneath it to see what it looks like. And this is perfect. All right, we're going to generate all of the other ones by just selecting them. Please be patient when it does the generation because it takes a little while to calculate. There's many booleans going on and each one has to iterate through uh, separately, so it doesn't do it in one go. It has to do each one on by its own. Okay, I'll just pause the video. Okay, we have a 100% success rate. I will lower the segmentation, lower segmentation, and we can just check out what that then looks like. I forgot to generate the other one over here, which we can just click on generate as well. Okay, this is looking really good. Finally, we want to focus on the contacts. I won't do this in this specific video, but in the forthcoming video I will demonstrate that, or please go to the website for information on how to make these contacts correct. Thanks. Okay.